As we begin to worship more and more at home on Sundays and throughout the week, many of us are realizing something that has always been true, that our homes are sacred. They are set apart and made holy by God. And so that started me to think about home altars. I've had one for years, and it is a really important space for me to be able to come and open myself up and be present to listen to God. And so I thought you might like to create one as well. So I thought what I would do is give you a couple ideas on what some of the basics are that are often found on a home altar, and then share with you what's on my own home altar, what's there and why I've placed it and what it means to me. So when you think about the altar at church, there are elements that are always present. There's the altar itself. There is something living, either the flower arrangements or plants. There's fabric covering the altar. There are candles. There's light to remind us of the light of Christ. And there is an image that reminds us of Jesus. So those are the images, and those are the things that really are the basis for starting a home altar. To have the table itself, to have something living, to have fabric, to have light, and to have an image that reminds you of Christ. So for me, what that means is that my home altar is actually a coffee table. It's a metal coffee table that I picked up in Dallas years ago. And sometimes it is my coffee table, and sometimes it is my prayer table. So it just depends on what season I'm in and what things are. I move things around in my house a little bit. But right now it is my home altar. I have as the fabric a prayer shawl that my friend Jeff has woven for me, and the reason why it's on the home altar right now is that it has a lot of purples and blacks. It helps me to remember that we are in the season of Lent. Some of the living things that I have on my altar, the most obvious one here is the Forsythia and the bare branches. And so I live here on campus at church, and so right now the whole entire campus is just ablaze with Forsythia. They are just beautiful. So I cut some down and brought them into the house, but also paired it with the bare branches, because what we know about the season of Lent is that it's the season of already but not yet. So that helps me to remember that. Some of the other living things that I have on the altar, I have this chestnut, and my friend Ginger gave it to me one day, and just the way that she placed it in my hand, it felt like we were having communion. And there was something beautiful and holy about that. And I thought, I've got to keep a hold of this. So for a while it was sitting on my desk, and it has made its way home to my home altar. Another living thing is a shell that was brought back for me from Greece. And then I have some dried rose petals that are from Valentine's Day. They're from my beloved. They're from Jay. And that's really the living thing. Something that's from the natural world is this stone. I picked it up on a mission trip years ago in Waco, Texas, and there was something about it that just felt like it belonged to me. And so sometimes when I'm having a hard time staying grounded, I will place it in my lap because it's pretty heavy, or else I will just reach over and just put my hand on it as a way to pray. So those are the living things. The images that remind me of Christ, I have two of them right now. One is an olive wood cross that my friend Patty brought back for me from Jerusalem when she was there last year. And the other one is this nail cross. And I'm not exactly sure where I picked it up, but I put it on my home altar every Lent to remind me that this is the part of the story of Jesus that we're about to encounter. I have a votive candle holder that was made for me by a dear friend, Teresa. It is always on my prayer table. It has orange in it, which is my favorite color. And sometimes it is very hard for me to shift gears and to focus my energy. And so what I will do sometimes is just simply ring a bell, because it's a way for me to be able to recognize that I'm in a new space and to let the other things that are in my mind just go for a moment. The other thing is I believe in praying with all of my senses. And so while I'm not someone who likes to burn incense, the scent is really important to me. So this is Thistle Farms creates healing oils. And so I will oftentimes anoint my body before I begin to pray as a way to have that scent, that incense in the air. Also, what I have is the Beloved button. We gave these out at church last year. And it helps me to remember that I am a beloved child of God, as are you. And I also have prayer books on the altar here. What we do know is that God hears all the prayers of our heart. So the ones that we speak from our heart and in our mind, but then also because we are in the Episcopal tradition, we have the gift of the Book of Common Prayer. So I always have a Book of Common Prayer. This happens to be the one that is the combination of the prayer book and the Bible. I also have the Revised Common Lectionary, so this helps us know what the readings are for every day of the week and then every Sunday of the year. And then I also have other books on my home altar because I really like to be able to study and to pray. So right now the ones that I have, and these often will rotate around, but just happens to be what is on there today, is the St. Clair's Prayer Book. I have this is one that I've had a very long time. You can sort of see it's yellowed with age. A dear, dear friend, Vera, gave this to me when I was fresh out of college, and it was almost like a book before I was ready for it, but now I have lived into it, and it's the Diary of Private Prayer, so that's a favorite. I am a deep lover of Stephen Mitchell's adaptations of the Psalms. So this is something that is always on my home altar. I read it often and I commend it to you, the Stephen Mitchell's A Book of Psalms. And because for me, poetry and prayer is so close in its nature, I often will have some poetry books on the altar. Right now I have Sabbaths by Wendell Berry. And as I have grown deeper and spent more time here at my home altar in the last couple weeks, I have realized that I'm bringing some old faithfuls back to the home altar with me. And this is a longtime favorite called Gorillas of Grace. So I invite you to really think about the basic elements of what a home altar can be for you, and then also bring your own sacred objects here. What would help you to focus your prayer life, to be able to look deeper into how you want to stay connected to God? The one last thing actually that I didn't mention is this creation. Now this is always on my home altar, and it is something that I have carried with me for several years. Many of you know that I have written 2 books about how to use Legos as theological reflection. And so it started out as theological reflection with children, and now it has become for all ages. But this is one of the very first creations that was made by a little sweet friend named Riley. And it is actually his depiction of Jonah and the whale. So this is supposed to be the whale, and inside is a minifigure of Jonah. And so because Riley had created this with such tender care and was able to articulate so deeply what that meant for him, I just have been unable to take that apart. And so it has traveled with me, and it finds a place on my home altar every time because it really is a sacred object. So I invite you to find your own sacred objects, place them in a special place in your home, and then make the space to be able to sit and be present to your prayer life, to God, to those who you might want to enter into prayer with, and let it feed your soul.